Allah istikametten ayırmasın. Burada değerli büyüklerimin de
This is Mustafa Mete Erkol, who's broadcasting his lessons on Periscope. Gune, you've been speaking to him.
Well, yes, Anne-Maria. You might think how political a maths lesson can be, but there's a huge political subtext here. Mustafa is a prep school teacher, and prep schools are a big phenomenon in Turkey because they are the most secure way for students to get a place in universities. And the government is trying really hard to ban these prep schools. Courts are not letting them yet because government believes that 1/3 of all these prep schools belongs to a movement called Gülen movement, which
This is a secretive Islamic movement.
Yeah, this is a religious movement whose leader lives in the US and
Fethullah Gülen.
Fethullah Gülen, and they have schools all around the world in 160 countries almost. And government thinks that by training students in these prep schools from an early age, they gained a huge influence in Turkish bureaucracy and security establishment by placing these students in universities, and they graduated and took up positions in bureaucracy and security establishment, and they wanted to bring down the government by using their influence in bureaucracy. But people like Mustafa tell us that they have nothing to hide. What they're doing is not political, but they want to just educate children, and he has been telling how much stress he's been going on.
Öğrencilerde büyük bir korku hakim. Öğretmenler olarak biz
This makes us feel under huge stress. I don't know if I'll have a job by the 1st of September this year, so I asked myself, what can I do? I love my job and don't want to do anything else. So I thought I could broadcast my lectures through the internet and continue teaching my students. I'm not making any money out of it for the time being, but I think I may find a way to earn my living through this.
So Gune, not only have you been speaking to him, you've also been watching some of his lessons on Periscope. Is he a good teacher?
He's a good teacher, and he's an engaging and fun character and a good talker, and 1,500 students who've been tuning in each day are probably agreeing with me, and they stay tuned in for 15 minutes at around 10 p.m. each night, which is quite late. Actually, he told me that his wife used to complain that he wasn't a good talker, he wasn't talking to her that much at home, but all of that has changed since he started broadcasting his lectures on Periscope. He became apparently a good talker, and I mean, he wasn't actually stopping when we were interviewing him. He didn't even breathe when he was speaking to us.
We let him talk again.
Derse başladığımız zaman
When we start our lecture, I ask my students where they are joining us from. They then message us the location on Periscope, and it feels really exciting to see that people from all over the country are joining. It's been 2.5 months since I started my lectures, and we already have established lots of rules for efficiency. For example, after teaching a subject or solving a mathematical problem, I ask my students if they are with me or not, or if they understand me or not, and they use emojis to tell me they understood. When I see a lot of emojis suggesting students are with me, that motivates me a lot.
We've been speaking to one of his students, Meltem Akin, who's 17, and she told us why she likes his lessons.
I watch Ekol Hoca's lessons every night, and if we understand, we raise our hands with emojis.
You raise your hands with emojis?
Yes, if we understand, I enjoy this. It's fun.
So these prep schools aren't actually banned yet, but if the ban were to come in, using Periscope in this way could be seen as a very controversial or bold move.
It will be a bold move, and it will be seen as a resistance, act of resistance online. But I'm not sure whether the government will be as concerned as it is now, because what they're concerned is the actual training system that these prep schools are providing. They're more concerned by what's happening offline right now.
You're listening to BBC Trending here on the BBC World Service. Now, some other stories getting people talking this week.
A case of parody has called on the UK government to dump its 5% tax on sanitary pads. It's one of a number of campaigns to change the way we talk about hearing.
I can't fathom that. You think to add an extra fee like VAT on my podcast.
A Chinese swimmer's abs have gone viral. Many young Chinese girls, and even a famous actress, have photoshopped Lee Zetao's image onto their pictures, so it looked like he was their boyfriend.
He was tortured, raped, he didn't say a word. Cheese, silent by nature.
Were the lyrics from a song called Death of Parmesan. It takes light of Vladimir Putin's scheme to bulldoze bury and burn a pile of imported Western food.
And it's time to say bye to LOL. A Facebook study suggests that people are choosing to use haha and emojis over LOL to express love.
And we're also on the social web on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and YouTube, so please do say hello.
Don't fall in the trap, be bigger than that. They're already lonely, so leave them alone. It's just creepy the way that they need to be known.
So as we've been hearing, Periscope is being used to teach maths lessons, but there are lots of other types of broadcasts on this app. It features a live stream of unfiltered comments, and some of the most popular women on the app have been telling us that it leaves them really exposed to trolling. They have literally had to block thousands of people because of offensive comments. One of those women is Amanda Oleander, an artist and illustrator based in LA, and she has over 300,000 followers on Periscope.
When people tune in, they see me paint live from beginning to end. It's just a day in the life of an artist. There are always, like, I would say 20% of open boobs or, like, you know, just random comments are inappropriate, and then the rest are really positive. I tell people, time it is, man, blah, blah, blah. If you or say anything that's disrespectful or negative, I will block.
And I've also experienced the sexist element to the comments firsthand while reporting on this story. Amanda Oleander, who you just heard there, she shared my post with her followers while we were chatting about this topic, and the comments that were posted during that broadcast literally made me blush. I didn't know what to say in response to them. I was also chatting to another BBC World Service programme called Outside Source earlier in the week, and during that broadcast a number of highly inappropriate comments were posted onto their account and onto mine. We contacted Periscope about this issue, and they said that they've introduced features on the app that allow people to block users, limit who can comment, or to have private broadcasts altogether. And if you'd like to watch our video report about sexism on live streams, you can go to our blog at bbc.com/trending and our YouTube channel at youtube.com/.
Turn off that screen and go outside. Another day. Passerby say hi.
So while comments are integral to live streaming apps like Periscope, they're being scaled back on many websites, in some cases because of trolling. Recently, technology sites like The Verge and The Daily Dot have shut down their comment sections because they've become too hard to manage. So what impact will this have on those websites who are looking to build a community online? Earlier, I was joined by Nicholas White, the editor of The Daily Dot, and Reese, the editor of Autostraddle, which is an online community for LGBT people.
Comments have always been a big part of our community from the very beginning when we started. I started out as a blogger, and so did a lot of the founding team, and actually like a lot of the people who I founded Autostraddle with are people I met through the comments on my blog. And a lot of what we go online for, what queer women go online for, is to meet other people like them and to feel that they're not the only ones who feel the way they do about this or that. For us from the start, we never even considered not having comments. They were always really important.
Nick, with that in mind, you're the editor of The Daily Dot, and you guys have recently scrapped your comment section. Why?
Well, unfortunately, in our experience, the kind of community is possibly about really hasn't evolved in our comments. It's evolved in our social media accounts. And the community of support that you're creating on Autostraddle is a tighter sense of community there, more of a birds of a feather.
I completely understand why the Daily Dot wouldn't have comments. Or why, I mean, honestly, most websites wouldn't want to have comments. Like, I don't know, 75% of the time probably they're more trouble than they're worth. And for us, it's a lot of, it's still a lot of work for us to keep up on.
Nick, is there another reason? I mean, when you think about the type of comments that are posted across the board, so what's the worst comment that you've had on that page? And what's the real reason why you've moved it over to Facebook?
What ends up happening is the mob shouts down all these people, and what happens is it actually becomes about silencing voices, not about opening up voices. And I can't point to X comment was the straw that broke the camel's back, because it wasn't that. There was no moment at which somebody said something that was so vile, so horrendous, that we just said, that's it, we're done. It wasn't because of anything any individual said. It was rather because most individuals weren't saying anything on our site.
So what are they saying on your Facebook page?
In some sense, because we're not worrying about comments on our website, it's allowed us to be a lot more interactive on media. And so what we started doing is sort of, when our users troll us, we've been trolling them back.
Really? What editorial decision you back that up?
So our guideline is you should always interact with the journalist. If somebody is saying something that is absolutely wrong, if you'd actually read the article, us coming back and saying, hopefully in a funny way, if you observe paragraph 3, the point that's made by whatever, the Director of Health and Human Services, directly controverts what you're saying,
Okay, so you're being a very polite troll, maybe not quite entering into troll category.
We try to be journalistic trolls,
But are you not just giving them what they want?
There is a line, and I think the people who are absolutely vicious, we ignore and we block and we just take them out of the conversation and we don't engage because that is the point.
There's a more like insidious kind of troll that's more difficult to handle. And a lot of those are people who didn't read the article but have some sort of personal agenda to make.
Okay, so tell us about that conversation that's happening on the Auto Travel website. Do you need moderators? Do you need to
Yeah, we don't have full-time moderators. We all just kind of keep an eye on it. When we write about something more about feminist issues that get shared on social media, half the point of people realizing it's coming from a queer website. We get men who come on and say mean things, but...
Reece, I want to put a question to you about what is your feeling on the idea of conversations moving on to a social platform like Facebook?
In addition to being a safe space, it's not all of our users necessarily are on Facebook or are out on Facebook or are even comfortable talking about queer stuff on Facebook with their name, their full name and their whole network accessible to everybody reading their comments. So that's obviously another big factor for us. We really aren't subjected to the same type of sexist trolling that female writers are on mainstream publications.
The female woman is just about one of the most dangerous things to do on the internet. It's not a congenial atmosphere as a sexual woman. If you dare to be a woman and like technology, if you have the temerity to pose, may the internet have mercy on your soul too.
So what can be done to solve this problem of trolling? We've been talking to Whitney Phillips, who's a US academic and assistant professor at Penfield University. She says the problem runs much deeper than internet behaviour. She spent 4 years amongst the trolls on the internet forum 4chan, and she's the author of the book, This Is Why We Can't Communicate.
Trolling is not just a problem specific to certain corners of the internet. It's actually a much bigger cultural problem, and that's why it's so hard to deal with.
On that note, you say there's a cultural problem with misogyny.
The problem is not confined just to trolls. Violent misogyny is so pervasive across the globe, online and offline, and trolls are they're taking commonplace behaviors to their grotesque extreme.
What can be done to address the challenges around these types of behaviors?
If it were as simple as trolls are the bad guys, we just have to find a way to get rid of the trolls, that would be comparatively easy. The problem is that it's so much more pervasive, so platforms need to decide who are we going to value. Privileging aggressor speech is not a good business move. Then there are steps that you can take. Hire more moderators. You can decide to shut down the comments. You can put together an algorithmic word filtering system. But the first step is deciding whose side you're on. You can't just step back and let the worst offenders run the show. You can't do that anymore. But I think that that's going to start to change.
Thanks for all the comments this week. We'll be back here on the BBC World Service at the same time next week. In the meantime, please feel free to continue commenting on the stories that we cover. Keep it clean, please. We're on social media and you can email us trending@bbc.co.uk, and of course we're online at bbc.com/trending.
And now on the BBC World Service, Sporting Witness with me, Alex Last.
And today we go back to August 1936, when Nazi Germany won the Olympics, and when the black American athlete Jesse Owens stunned the world.
Jesse Owens was the smoothest athlete I've ever seen. He ran like water flowing.
It was never so after the men, by the beauty of performance and the high standard. To watch him was
After the fanfare of the Olympic opening comes the most amazing heat of the Jesse Owens.
I think of the tremendous crowd, so I think it's something that I have more than anything else. And it was my good fortune to do so.
Jesse Owens, speaking to the BBC in 1964, he'd been born James Cleveland Owens in Alabama in 1913, known by his initials JC. He was the youngest of 7 children. His family was poor and left the segregated South of Cleveland, Ohio, when he was 9 years old. Ruth Owens was Jesse's wife.
I met Jesse in elementary school. Jesse spoke rather fast at times, and the teacher and so from there on in, he was Jesse. He was in the same classroom with my sister. He used to always write me notes and give them to my sister, and she would give them to me. So we became very good friends. When he was in elementary school, they knew that he was special.
Like the rest of the world, the U.S. is preparing for the Olympic Games. In the 100 meters, it's Jesse Owens, the brown flash from Ohio, running away with the race. Again in the long jump, it's Jesse Owens, leaping 26 feet 3 inches. Jesse went to Ohio State University, and it was while there that he established his reputation as one of the greatest athletes in the world. In one day in 1935, he broke 3 separate world records and equaled a 4th. His sights were then firmly set on the Olympic Games to be held in Berlin the following year.
It was a dream and desire of mine for 8 years. I remember when I was in junior high school, and one of our great sprinters of our times by the name of Charlie Paddock came to our school, and then I began to read about the Olympic Games, and then I remember when I was in high school, I was defeated in making the American Olympic team in 1932, and then I looked forward to 36, and my year came, and the one race that I wanted to win was the 100 meters.
Berlin's great day dawns with the arrival of the Olympic flame at the end of its 2,000-mile journey from Greece. And meanwhile, a packed stadium and flag-draped cheering streets greet Chancellor Hitler on his way to perform the opening ceremony. Hitler saw the Games as a chance to show off to the world and a chance to demonstrate the Nazi ideology of Aryan racial supremacy, an ideology that black and subhuman. In the run-up to the Olympics, amid concerns over German anti-Semitism, the International Olympic Committee warned the Nazis against discrimination, and in Berlin, the duration of the Games, anti-Semitic signs were removed, and Nazi race laws were temporarily announced. For 14 days, the eyes of the world will be on Berlin, and Germany wants to take away every one of her millions of visitors as a friend. Almost immediately, Jesse Owens was the star of the Games. He first won the 100 meters in a time of 10.3 seconds, then he won the long jump, then the 200 meters, and finally the 4x100 meter relay. No American athlete has ever won 4 track gold medals in one Olympics. Next week, 100 meters. The world's most superb runner makes the others look as if they're walking. He wins the final and equals the world's record time. This and his later victory in the long jump may well be the athletic performance of the century.
He ran like water flowing.
Marty Glickman was a Jewish-American sprinter and a teammate of Jesse Owens.
I got confused by this over the rest of the field. Jesse was the first
and the myth developed that Hitler refused to shake his hand. But as it happened, Hitler had been told by the IOC at the start of the game that he had to congratulate all victorious athletes or none at all. But perhaps more interesting was the reaction of the largely German crowd.
To watch him was a delight. And he was a very modest person, and
and the way how he behaved, how he smiled, and how aristocratic in his bearing. And suddenly the German Jesse.
Tryndamere was a German captain who'd effectively been excluded from the German team for being Jewish.
We were at the long jump of the second day, and when Jesse Owens missed the mark, the German Lutz Long came and helped him to adjust his mark. And they helped each other. And how those two men competed against each other, close to the best of their ability, but still supporting each other, was for me sport and comradeship and joy at its highest. What went on inside the stadium had gone out of the control of the night. There was something in sports which was stronger than all the theories of race and you had the feeling that athletes met as sportsmen.
Jesse Owens during the course of the Olympic Games was a German hero, a hero for the German people. He was so popular that he would have to be taken into the Olympic Stadium via a secret entrance, escorted in, else he would be mobbed by the adulation of the crowds. Many times during the course of his various competitions, you could hear the chant of thousands of people raising their voices and repeating in unison, all Vens, all Vens, all Vens. But that was the kind of massed, unrehearsed cheering for Jesse Owens. I think this would be
There's no doubt that the idea of Aryan supremacy was very badly dented in Berlin. Jesse Owens was the highlight of the Olympics, and he became the symbol of all what we felt was anti-Nazi. So to us, being Jewish, we remember the Olympic Games and the arms of the Nazis.
Jesse Owens returned to the United States as a hero and received a parade. According to one story, being black, he was told he had to take a hotel freight elevator to reach a reception in his honor. After the Olympics, times were tough financially. He was involved in various businesses without much success, and at one point he even agreed to race against horses and publicity stunts just to earn some money, as his wife Ruth recalled.
After the Olympics, being the color that he was, the doors weren't open like they are today. Down the line, he raced against, in race hall. He would run 75 yards.
But in later life, Jesse Owens did achieve financial security and became a sporting ambassador to the US. He was feted around the world, not least in Germany, where his incredible feats had not been forgotten. Jesse Owens died in 1980 at the age of just 66, and to the end, he remained a champion of the Olympics.
You think in terms of the years of hard work, and then you look at the crowd, and you hear the cheers of the crowd, and you hear your national anthem of your country, and you see your flag rising atop this flagpole, and then you can say to yourself as you receive the gold medal, today I'm an Olympic champion.
Jesse Owens ending this edition of Sporting Witness with me, Alex Last. For more of our history programs, just search for BBC Witness.
This is the BBC World Service. In a couple of minutes, the news. But first, where can you hear extraordinary stories?
We started performing in various different places, and little girls will come up to us and they represent so much.
The ocean starts sucking you down. It's one of the most truly incredible experiences.
I am a girl. I cannot live as a boy. I'm finally comfortable in my body.
Outlook. Online at bbcworldservice.com/outlook. And in 30 minutes on the BBC World Service,
Global Business examines the economics of opera. Productions are expensive for parents and to attend. So is the public getting value for money? So today's World Business Report.
This is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Hello, I'm Tony Boxignori and this is World Business Report on the BBC World Service. It's the start of a new business week in Asia. And for the next half hour, we'll be bringing you all the latest business news and opinion from around the world. In cities across Brazil, tens of thousands of people have again taken to the streets to protest against the policies of President Dilma Rousseff. We hear from Sao Paulo on why people are so unhappy with their leader.
I think she'll be out before the mandate's over. I'm glad the Brazilian people have woken up. Even people from more modest backgrounds who voted for her and now face the
In Germany, MPs prepared to vote on the latest Greek bailout. The Chancellor Merkel again warns Athens there will be no debt relief. We get the view from Berlin. And from India, we hear why Prime Minister Modi is finding it so difficult to fulfill his pledge to enact major land reform. That's all after the bulletin of the latest world news.
Hello, I am Neil Nunes with the BBC News. Tens of thousands of people have taken part in anti-government protests in cities across Brazil. Demonstrators demanded the removal of President Dilma Rousseff, blaming her for an economic downturn and for a corruption scandal involving the oil giant Petrobras. President Rousseff was chair of Petrobras at the time and much of the corruption is believed to have taken place, but she has not been directly implicated. Rura Davis reports from the largest protest in Sao Paulo.
These protesters want nothing less than the impeachment of President Dilma Rousseff. They accuse her and the ruling Workers' Party of being up to their necks in a huge corruption scandal focused on the state-controlled oil giant Petrobras. Allegations of corruption aside, the biggest problem for President Rousseff is arguably the state of the economy. Brazil is about to go into recession, and this could be a prolonged economic crisis.
Egypt's president has approved stringent new counter-terrorism measures seeking to strengthen the country's ability to respond to the Islamist insurgency. Rights groups say President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi will use the legislation to crush dissent, lock up his opponents, and impose further restrictions on freedom of expression. The Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi has pressed ahead with his reform of government institutions by removing a third of ministers in his cabinet. There have been widespread protests demanding action to tackle corruption and incompetence. As the battle against Islamic State militants continues, an investigation has named the former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki and more than 30 other senior figures who it says were responsible for the security failures that led to the fall of Mosul to IS last year. Muwafaq al-Rabai, a member of the Iraqi parliament, said the report was deeply flawed and called for an independent investigation.
I would like to see an independent, professional committee formed of foreign nationals from the United Nations, from the European Union, with some Iraqi judges investigating this disaster of June last year, and with conclusion, whatever that conclusion will be, we should accept it.
Security is tight at polling stations across Sri Lanka. As voting gets underway shortly in the general election, 4 people have died in violent incidents during the month-long campaign, although monitors have reported less violence than in previous elections. Indonesian transport officials say villagers have located the wreckage of a domestic passenger plane which crashed into a mountain with 64 people on board. The plane, operated by Jakarta Air, lost contact with air traffic control during bad weather in the remote Papua region. Rescuers are heading for the crash site known for its dense forest and deep beach. From the BBC. There are reports of gunfire in a number of locations in eastern Ukraine and on lines dividing Ukrainian government forces and Russian-backed rebels. Residents in the port city of Mariupol have reported artillery fire to the east. The Interfax news agency says shells fell on a residential area. Heavy rocket fire is also reported in and around the rebel stronghold of Donetsk. The South Sudanese President Salva Kiir is in Ethiopia for talks aimed at ending the 20-month conflict in his country. Government and rebel leaders face international sanctions if they fail to sign a deal by Monday. Both sides say they might need more time to resolve key issues such as power sharing in a transitional government. The United States has reportedly warned China to stop sending undercover agents to America to pressurize Chinese fugitives to return home. The New York Times newspaper quotes officials as saying the Chinese agents in America are using various strong-arm tactics to coerce the expatriates to go back. newspaper said the mission, named Operation Foxhound, is part of a global Chinese effort to repatriate prominent people suspected of economic corruption. Comment from the U.S. State Department. Scientists studying how owls are able to swoop on their prey undetected have discovered that, unlike other birds, they are able to suppress the noise of flying. Scientists from Dalian University of Technology in China described the owl as the king of acoustic stealth. Here's Rebecca Jones.
It was already known that owls have feathers that absorb aerodynamic noise when gliding, but a new study found that they also suppress and cancel noise caused by those vibrations that is heard when the owl flies. Research authors say their findings could help engineers develop special materials and structures to help reduce noise created by machines such as wind turbines.
BBC News.
Hello and welcome to World Business Report. I'm Tony Bonsignori. On the programme today, tens of thousands of Brazilians take to the streets to call for the impeachment of President Dilma Rousseff. The German Chancellor Angela Merkel again warns Greece that there will be no debt relief as German MPs prepare to vote on the latest Greek bailout deal. And from California, a planet-sized surprise for fans of a certain film franchise.
We expected it just to be a presentation about Star Wars The Force Awakens, and we were surprised when the CEO of the Disney company, Bob Iger, came out and made an announcement about the parks.
All that's coming up later in the program. But first, well, that was the sound on the streets of Sao Paulo on Sunday as thousands of Brazilians protested against the policies of the country's president, Dilma Rousseff. Tens of thousands of Brazilians took part in similar protests across the country, many of them calling for the president to be impeached. Over the past year, President Rousseff's government has become mired in a corruption scandal centred on Brazil's state oil company, Petrobras. But protesters are also angry about the country's struggling economy. Economic growth has ground to a halt, while inflation has spiralled and the value of Brazil's currency, the real, has fallen sharply. And many blame the austerity policies of President Rousseff. Well, earlier I spoke to the BBC South America business correspondent, Daniel Gallup.
This is the third time that people go out and protest against the president this year. We haven't estimated more than 1 million people around Brazil. And that's sort of roughly what we saw in other protests too. The government of President Dilma Rousseff had very bad news in recent weeks. She lost a lot of her support in Congress. Her austerity measures, her austerity package hasn't been working as intended. And also the government hasn't been able to push more economic measures through Congress. So she's had a pretty bad spell. And also there are some issues regarding some of her spending in her government last year. And that might actually be used as a legal argument for her impeachment, and that case is moving slowly forward. So I think the community is send in protest and see if they can bring down this government.
You talked about the economy there, the problems in the economy. What's gone wrong, and how far is President to blame? Not so many years ago, Brazil was a success story. It was the future. It was one of the bricks, and now the economy is
Well, what the protesters say is that a lot of Brazilians the government of consuming too much in energy prices, natural prices, but Brazil prices too much China is slowing down and the world economy is slowing down. Not only did that not work and the Brazilian economy didn't pick up during that period, now Brazil is cash strapped and is having to scale down in its spending and do a lot of basically austerity measures.
What do they think then, these protesters, about the president's chances of surviving her full term?
The economic crisis is turning into a political crisis. So we've seen all sorts of movements. We've seen some allies of the president actually talking behind her back about what to do in the case she doesn't finish her government. Some people ask for her to speak. You hear all sorts of movements in the political scene, and if you go out of the streets and talk to people, you see a lot of the confusion too.
If she's got any dignity, I do really hope that she does. She will renounce. But not
something that happened only during our government, but it comes from a while before. It's obvious that corruption is just a pandemic here in Brazil, and it's time that we get done with it.
Eu acho que sim. Acho que ela termina.
I think she'll make it to the end, just to make a point about her strength and the Workers' Party. I don't think impeachment will solve things. I'm not in favor of it.
I think she'll be out before the mandate's over. I'm glad the Brazilian people have woken up. Even people from more modest backgrounds who voted for her are now facing the reality. I see this every day as a doctor. Patients tell me they don't have the money for medication anymore. Why does this happen?
So what happens now, Daniel?
She has lost a lot of Congress, but she won again a very full support from the president of the Senate, who is from a different party. So the government looks a bit more stronger now, and also Dilma Rousseff's finance minister has announced a few more measures that he thinks will help. So it's a string of three slightly good news that might take the government again to a good place.
That was the BBC South America business correspondent Daniel Gallant. The German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, has said she expects the International Monetary Fund to take part in the latest Greek bailout. Eurozone finance ministers finally agreed a new Greek